And here is where this gets personal to me. I used to believe in hell. I didn't treat it like some little story. I believed it was real. And that belief affects the way you think. It makes you afraid to ask questions. It makes you scared to doubt. It makes you scared to study other religions. And it can make you believe that questioning the claim is dangerous. Y'all, I got a real simple question today. What does God actually gain by punishing someone in hell forever? And I mean forever, y'all. Think about that. Forever. Not 10 years, not 1,000 years. Forever. No second chance. No lesson learned. No getting better. Just punishment that never ends. And I'm sitting here thinking, what exactly is that supposed to accomplish? You know, punishment normally has a purpose. Sometimes it's meant to correct somebody. Sometimes it's meant to protect other people. Sometimes it's meant to stop someone or somebody from doing more harm. But if hell never ends, the person never gets corrected. They never return to society. They never get a chance to do better. Nothing gets fixed. Nothing gets restored. So again, what does God gain from it? Now, before somebody get froggy and jump in the comments saying, CJ, God doesn't send anybody to hell. People send themselves. Hold on, grasshopper. We're going to get there. See, changing the wording does not change the question. Whether God sends you there, allows you to go there, judges you worthy of going there, or creates the rules that lead you there, God is still connected to the system, people. So today, I'm not asking whether hell makes you scared. Hell, I'm not asking whether the Bible talks about hell. I'm not asking whether you personally believe I deserve to go to hell, which I don't care. I'm simply asking something much simpler. What is eternal punishment supposed to accomplish? Think about it. If we're going to call God perfectly loving, perfectly just, and perfectly wise, then hell should make sense under those descriptions. And y'all, I don't think it does. Let's start with punishment itself. When a parent punishes a child, the goal should not be to make the child suffer just because the parent was angry. The goal should be correction. You want the child to learn something. You want them to understand what they did, you know. You want them to make a better choice next time. Even our justice system claims punishment should have some kind of purpose, you know. Examples: protecting society, you know, stopping crime, correcting behavior, getting justice for the victim. Now, whether our system always does that is a whole different conversation. But at least there is supposed to be a reason behind the punishment. So what is the reason behind hell, though? I mean, according to what many believers teach, once you get there, that's it. There ain't no getting no better. There ain't no making things right. There ain't no change of heart that gets you released. You could be sorry. You could understand. You could finally believe. You could beg for mercy, but it's too late at that point. So to me, that means hell ain't correction. Correction gives someone somebody the chance to correct something. Hell ain't rehab. No one is being prepared to return anywhere. You know, hell ain't protection. I say that because an all-powerful God wouldn't need to torture somebody forever just to keep everybody else safe. God could remove the threat. He could separate the person. God could allow them to stop existing. God could do anything, right? So why eternal suffering? What is it fixing? And that brings me to the next problem. How does a temporary life deserve permanent punishment? Make it make sense. I mean, think about it. A person live, 60, 70, maybe 90 years if they lucky. During that short life, they make mistakes. They believe some wrong things. They doubt. They misunderstand. They grow up in certain religions, or maybe they grow up with no religion at all. Or maybe they just hear about Christianity and they just unconvinced like I am. But then they die. We die. And the punishment for getting it wrong during that little bitty window of time is suffering with no ending. Y'all, that ain't proportional. Sorry for the big word. And proportional just means the punishment should match the offense. We understand this for every other part of life. You don't give someone life in prison for running a stop sign, do you? You don't beat a child for forgetting to clean their room, do you? You don't burn somebody alive because they don't believe what you believe or believe your story. We would call that cruel, right? But somehow when the punishment becomes infinitely worse and God is the one doing it, we start calling it perfect justice. How? And please don't tell me, well, God is good, so whatever God does is good. That don't explain nothing, bro. That just means you already decided God is good, and then you label everything connected to God as good afterwards. That's not an explanation. That's protecting the belief from being questioned, if you ask me. Now, somebody might say, but CJ, sin is against an infinite God, so the punishment has to be infinite. Y'all think about that for a second. Why would the size of the person offended determine how long someone suffers? If I disrespect a police officer, should the punishment be greater than disrespecting a regular person? No. If I insult a governor, should I get more prison time for insulting my neighbor? No. If I insult Donald Trump, should I be punished forever because the president holds a higher office? No. We judge actions based on the harm done, the intent, the situation, and whether the punishment actually makes sense. And if God can't be injured, can't be weakened, can't lose power, and can't be threatened, what damage did my disbelief do to God? God remains God. God loses nothing. I mean, my lack of belief does not take away his power. It does not remove him from heaven. It does not harm him at all. So why would honest disbelief deserve endless suffering, especially when God supposedly knows exactly what evidence would convince me or us? That's another thing we have to talk about. See, according to Christianity, God already knows everything. God knew who would believe before they were born. God knew who would doubt. God knew who would choose the wrong religion. God knew who would never hear the message clearly. God knew who would die unconvinced. God knew all of it before creating anybody. So why create someone while already knowing they will suffer forever? And I already hear the answer coming from some of y'all in the comments. Free will, CJ, free will. But free will does not solve the problem. And if I know, let me back up. If I know a bridge is going to collapse and I knowingly send my child across that bridge, I can't turn and say, well, my son freely chose to walk across it. I knew the outcome. I had the power to stop it. And I created the situation knowing exactly what would happen. Now imagine if I built the bridge though. I created the person, I created the rules, I knew every decision they would make, I knew the evidence they would receive, I knew how their mind would respond, and I still went forward with the whole plan. At some point, we have to ask whether free will is just being used as an excuse instead of an actual answer. And let's talk about the phrase, God doesn't send people to hell, people choose hell. Do they really? I mean, who wakes up and says, you know what? I want to be tortured forever. Y'all want to be burned forever. Man, nobody don't choose that. And y'all know that. People may choose not to believe a religious claim. People may choose to live differently. People may reject Christianity. But rejecting a claim is not the same thing as choosing eternal suffering. That would be like me holding a gun to someone's head and saying, give me your wallet or choose to get shot. Then after I pull the trigger, I say, I didn't shoot them. They chose the bullet. No, they didn't. I created the threat. I gave them the option and I enforced the punishment. A choice made under an infinite threat ain't much of a free choice anyway. Love me, worship me, believe the right thing, or suffer forever. Y'all would call that abusive in any other relationship, but when the same idea gets attached to God, y'all are told to call it love. And let me be fair. Not every Christian believes hell is eternal torture. Some believe people are destroyed and stop existing. Some believe hell is temporary. Some believe everyone will eventually be restored. And honestly, those views at least appear to recognize the problem. Endless suffering is hard to connect with perfect love, but that also raises another question, at least to me it does. If Christians cannot even agree about what hell is, why are people so confident telling everyone else that they're going to go there? One preacher says it's a literal fire. Another says it's separation from God. Another one says it's destruction. Another one says it's symbolic. Another one says it lasts forever. Another one says it does not exist at all. But somehow everyone is certain I need to be scared of it. Y'all don't even agree on what I'm supposed to be afraid of. And here is where this gets personal to me. I used to believe in hell. I didn't treat it like some little story. I believed it was real. And that belief affects the way you think. It makes you afraid to ask questions. It makes you scared to doubt. It makes you scared to study other religions. And it can make you believe that questioning the claim is dangerous. What happens if you're wrong? That's a question I used to always ask myself. What happens if asking the question makes God angry? These are questions I ask, What happens if doubt sends you to hell? That fear can keep a person trapped in belief, even when the belief no longer makes sense to them. And y'all, fear is powerful, but fear ain't evidence. Being scared that hell might be real don't make hell real. It don't prove that it's real. Every religion can threaten you with something. Christianity can threaten hell. Islam can threaten judgment. Other traditions have their own punishments and afterlives. You cannot believe all of them just because they scare you. At some point, you have to ask what evidence supports the claim, not how scary the claim is. And let me make something clear. I'm not saying evil actions should have no consequences. I'm not saying murderers and abusers should not get with what they did. I'm not saying they shouldn't get away with it. I'm not saying justice does not matter, because justice matters, but justice and revenge ain't always the same thing, people. Justice should address the wrong. Justice should protect the people. Justice should repair what can be repaired. Justice should be fair. Endless suffering repairs nothing, though. The victim does not become unharmed. The person suffering does not become better. The past does not change. God does not become more powerful. Heaven does not become safer. Nothing improves. The suffering just continues because the point is the suffering. And if suffering itself is the point, then we need to stop calling that correction. We need to stop calling that restoration. And we definitely need to explain why we are calling it love. Now, somebody might say, CJ, you're judging God by human standards. Well, sorry for bumping the mic. Well, I lost my train of thought. What other standards do I have if that's the case? When they say God is fair, they are using a human understanding of fairness. When they say God is merciful, they are using a human understanding of mercy. But the moment God's actions appear cruel, suddenly we're told human words do not apply. You can't have it both ways. You cannot tell me God is loving in a way I'm supposed to understand, then tell me I can't question whether what eternal torture looks like. If the word love means the complete opposite when applied to God, then calling God loving tells me nothing. Now let me bring this home. What does God gain by punishing people forever? Does God gain power? No. Does God gain knowledge? No. Does God become safer? No. Does the person become better? No. Does the harm get repaired? No. Does the punishment eventually accomplish its goal? There is no ending where we get to find out. It just keeps going and going and going forever. And when a punishment has no correction, no restoration, no protection that could not be achieved another way and no ending, I have a hard time calling that perfect justice. I'm sorry. It looks more like endless revenge to me. And revenge is not made holy just because you attach God's name to it. So believers, this is my question for y'all. Not what verse talks about hell, not whether you think I deserve it, not whether God has the authority to do it. What does eternal punishment actually accomplish? What gets fixed? What gets restored? What does God gain? Because saying God can do whatever he wants does not make the action loving. And saying his ways are higher than ours does not answer the question. If hell is truly perfect justice, then somebody should be able to explain what makes it just without using fear, without threatening me, and without telling me I'm not allowed to question God. Until then, I'm not going to pretend endless suffering makes sense just because I was taught to fear it. Sorry. No fear, no dogma, just clarity.
Do you know what I found? The more you know, the less you know.